Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. In today's video, we're going to be continuing on our Masterclass series. And in this particular video, we're going to look at the battle in the North Atlantic, and particularly the battle between the German Navy that you see in the Baltic there, and the home fleet for the British. And that can change because we can bring other ships into it. Like, let's just move around here a bit. Now, the only ships I've put on the board are the French ships, as you see. That's all of them there. Well, just about all of them. And the British ships and the German ships, or most of them anyway. So there's a couple down here as well. A couple of British ships. There's a cruiser and a transport. The reason I put all the British and French ships on there is because I want to show you that they are also necessary to be playing the rest of the game. So how many of those can you use in the North Atlantic? And there's a couple of ships, torpedo boat destroyer and a transport down in Australia. So let's just get to it. In my last video, we talked about the Western Front, and really the naval battle here is an extension of that battle in the Western Front. It's all about supply and about the other things, like that you can do here in Northern Europe. And so it is actually a part of the Western Front when it comes to this game. I mean, not really when it comes to the war, but when it comes to this game. The most important thing, of course, is getting units from Britain here into France. And you need to do that in order to have a chance at winning the Western Front if you're the Allies. And so the Germans, if they can disrupt that, then they would like to do that. Let's take a look at what we begin here with. This is the 1912 setup. So if you look at it, they have just a little bit more for Germany, just a tiny bit more when it comes to this fleet over here in Sea Zone A23 compared to in the Baltic Sea. And so, like, if you count a dreadnought as 2, because it takes 2 to sink it, so that's 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And then if you go and look at the British, that's 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 13 to 10 in favor of the Germans. And so you think, well, why don't you just go and kill them every time? Because the Germans can make it in there, or make it out there, make it out of the Baltic Sea. They have the Kiel Canal here that they can go through, whereas the Allied navies can't get into the Baltic Sea. You do have a Russian navy right here. There's only 3 ships there, but they're already in there. Now, they can't get out while they're at war. So the German Navy is the only one really that can take a shot if they want, and they are slightly bigger. But one of the reasons why you might not want to do that is because that's all the Germans have. Like, I don't know if I showed you there, but there's that one German ship here, and there's 2 German ships in the Pacific, but you kind of need them in the Pacific. Like, they're not really, they're actually kind of valuable out there. There's a cruiser there that you can break into cruiser rating, and there's a torpedo boat destroyer out there that you can use to try to pick off a ship or 2 if at all possible. And so, you can't really bring any more ships. Like that one that's there in the Mediterranean, he can't get through Gibraltar because he can, but he'd have to roll to get through the minefield there. So, Germany's not going to get any more ships up here unless they buy them. Whereas the British, as you've seen, like, they've got ships that they can bring up here, and then there's also the French Navy. So, like, if you had really good luck and you took the British out and you had lots of ships left, well, then you're good, right? But you're kind of throwing all your eggs into that basket if you do that. And I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying that, if you don't get it, then, that's going to screw you. Now, the Germans can play the game here better without this Navy here than the British can without their Navy. If the Germans did come out here, and I did play a game like this, where the German Navy attacked the British Navy, and they still had 4 damaged dreadnoughts left, the Germans did. And so the British just don't make enough money in one turn to be able to put enough ships down in the water to not get attacked by the German Navy and destroyed with what was left. And so what happens then is that you're never going to get units across from Britain into France. And so the Germans are going to be able to take over on the Western Front there over time. Like they make more money than the French do, right? So, you know, the British have to have a navy there. They don't have a choice. Whereas the Germans, they don't have to have a navy here because the British can't get in here unless, of course, they manage to get Denmark, or the Allies somehow get Denmark through diplomacy. I mean, they can attack it too, but the penalty is pretty steep on that. But they're not going to get in here, and even if they do, the capital is not on the coast there. So it's not going to do them that much good to do that. But what it is going to do if the Germans don't have a navy, like if they go out there and get destroyed and the British still do have a navy, it's not over for them. They can still even win the Western Front. They don't need this navy to do that. But it does take away some of their options. Like probably the best option that they have with this navy is that they can take out Petrograd at any time they want, if they if they can get in there with enough units, and the Russians didn't put any more units on Petrograd. There's none on here right now, but trust me, there's units there in the setup. I've only set up the ships for this video. But that's always an option to them. If they're losing the game particularly, they can, okay, well, let's just go try to take Petrograd and make the Russians collapse. And that could change the game right there. If it hasn't gone too late before you've done that, then you can certainly turn the game around if you're the Central Powers by taking Petrograd. Now, if you lose your navy here, then you're never going to have that chance to do that, are you? That doesn't mean that you can't make the Russians collapse, but you're going to have to win that battle on the Eastern Front. Honestly, you're not just going to be able to raid Petrograd and take them out. So there's that, and there's also the threat projection that you have out here in the British Isles. Now, the British Navy might not always be sitting here. Like they might be sitting back here or in behind or whatever. Like you could be leaving open these territories here for the Germans to come out and do a landing. Like maybe even take London out if you fall asleep. Like if they buy another transport, right now the Germans only have one transport. But if they buy another transport just for that threat projection and they have a couple of Marines, then you never know. Like if nothing else, it forces these guys to have to defend their territories. Whereas if there's no German Navy, they never ever have to worry about defending. There's nothing that's going to pop up. Like there's no airborne in this game and things like that, right? Like you just don't have to worry about anything. So if you do take that shot and you fail, then you're kind of screwed. And like you think, well, why not just take them out and then take London? There's a few more units on. Like I've only put the seaplane on because it's part of the battle. But the thing is, like as you've seen, it's 13-10 in hits that they have here. So they're going to need all of their ships just to take these ones out. That means that they're only going to have, if they do get through, they've only got a transport. They don't have any landing shots to take out any units, and they're only going to be using 2 infantry to try to take that out. And so it's kind of a Hail Mary. It's a hope and a prayer kind of move. And sure, like I said, you can get it, but that's going to give the Americans a bunch of money, a bump to their income, and you might not have any navy left after that. And then as you see here, like the British have, they have 5 ships just around the British Isles that you didn't attack. And then they have all those ships down in the Mediterranean down there. So you look over here, like these ships here, there's a sub over here, and there's 4 more ships right here. So those ships can make it up. Plus you got that cruiser down in South Africa down there. The ships that are in India, you're probably going to need them over there, but they are there, right? And then on the build queue here, let's just take a look at this. So this is the production chart with just those 3 navies on there. The British have 3 dreadnoughts that $8 each that you can spend to get them on the board. So with all that other stuff there, and with not much money, the British can rebuild their navy. And unless you're left with some navy, like if you get left with 3 or 4 or 5 bigger ships for the Germans, then fine. But if you're just barely getting them and you've only got 1 damaged dreadnought left, then you've kind of, like it's like I said, you're not going to have a navy for the rest of the game. Or if you do, then you're spending a lot of your money on navy, and you're not spending it on the land where you really need to, because it's 2 against 1 on the land when it comes to the Western Front. You see here that Germans also have a dreadnought at stage 2, so for only 4 IPP you can move that one along, so that's going to bolster their navy as well. And then they've got one on stage 4, so you need 3 stages to go, $12 to build that dreadnought. The British also have the cruiser there, so that's only going to cost 6 IPP to get that cruiser put in there. Now if you're the British player starting this game, and you're playing, you know your opponent, and you know that's something that they like to do, that they're very aggressive with their navy, and you kind of suspect that they might be going for this attack, then during the prequel, you can spend 8 IPP and develop one of those dreadnoughts and put a dreadnought on the board here. You know, that almost guarantees that the Germans are not going to have a big navy left afterwards, and that you might be able to just take them out with the ships that you have here already. And so neither side's going to have a navy, but the British have more navy around the board to bring home, and so they're going to have a better start on getting a navy on the board than the Germans are. And also the British don't have to spend as much money on ground troops here in the Western Front, and so they're going to be able to afford it a little bit better. It is a chance, and it's a risk. It can pay it off if you're the German player, but not necessarily. Now, I'd say about the other way, doing it, but it's not really an option, right? Like, you would have to run this straight, so each ship would have to get through the minefield to get into the Baltic Sea. So that's not really a consideration. That's taking too much of a chance as far as I'm concerned with the British. Now, with the French, you see, like, they've got those 3 ships there. One of them is a transport, and down here another one is a transport. I've always been a fan of trying to keep the French boats down in the Mediterranean here. Like, let the British ships patrol the North Atlantic, and the French ships take the Mediterranean, because the Allies do have an advantage in the Mediterranean, and one of the reasons is because the French Navy is there. Now, without the French Navy, even if the Italians do go the way of the Allies, then it's probably pretty even down there, because the Ottomans don't have much of a navy, and especially if you're playing the prequel and the Italian player is pretty sharp and they decide to take out the Ottoman navy, they might not have any navy at all, and the Austrian navy is not overpowering. So you can control the Mediterranean with what you have there. The French don't ever have to buy any boats to do that. But at the same time, if the Germans did come out and take out the British Navy, then you can bring the French Navy up to the North Atlantic there to help with the British while they rebuild their own navy. And like, you're going to have to do that, because you can't get your mandatory offensives in. You can't help the French on the Western Front. Like, the British have to have a navy here. There's just no doubt about it. but they do have those options, right? And the French, they actually, having that Mediterranean Navy is actually pretty good because, like I said, you've got this transport and you've got this transport. You've also got a transport and a cruiser over in Asia there. That they're not doing anything for you over there. Doesn't matter if Japan goes to the Central Powers or if it goes to the Allies. Like if it goes to the Central Power, you're going to want to get them out of there anyway, right? Because the Japanese will come after them. And if they go to the Allies, then you don't need them over there. The Japanese can take care of anything that's going on in the Pacific. And so you're going to bring those over to the Mediterranean. And so that's 3 transports that the French are going to have. That's pretty cool because if you're doing okay here in France on the Western Front, then you can have some units here, and you've got those 3 transports. You've got pre-dreadnoughts and you've got cruisers, and you can go. They can be used for landing shots. You know, if you go after the Ottomans or if you go after Austria, or if you need to go down into Africa for whatever reason. Like those are pretty handy down there. So the French Navy you would probably only bring to the North Atlantic if you absolutely have to. Now, if you don't do that raid, then probably the best thing that you can do is finish that 1 dreadnought off. So that puts another dreadnought in here. And at some point in time, maybe buy another transport and a couple of Marines. Even if you don't use the Marines to attack anybody, the fact that they're there and they're projecting threats to both the Russians and to the British and to the French too, along the French coast there. I mean, that's pretty valuable to have because people are forced to defend in behind the lines that they want to defend in, and so you know that's going to help you out. But with the Germans, though, the best things that they can do is to mobilize more submarines, especially early in the game, because before the British developed the technologies, like there's a couple of technologies there. There's convoy system and there's depth charges and hydrophones. Before they develop either one of those, all they've got to combat submarines is just seaplanes. That's it. And seaplanes only attack at 3. And of course, you can't fly as far as you want and attack them. You have to attack them on maritime air patrol. So they can only go 2 spaces to attack a submarine, and they've only got 1 shot. And if they miss that shot at 3 or less, so a 25% chance, then the submarine just dives and there's nothing they can do about it. That battle is over. So it's really hard for them to chase down those submarines. And there's a lot of money to be had out here, particularly for the British. Like this line here is worth 6. This one's worth 5 to the British. You don't want to be attacking the Americans because that'll bring the Americans into the war. But 6 and 5, and I tell you, like if you get on this, in this sea zone here, that's 6 for this line. That's 1 French for this line. And this line here, that's 6 for the British and 3 for the French. So you can do a ton of raiding just in this one sea zone. And, you know, like I said, all they can do is attack you with seaplanes. And so, you know, if you decide not to go for that raid, you still have those options when it comes to the German Navy. Like, you can still be quite effective. And the other thing is, if you put a sub in this sea zone here, A22, where the narrow crossing is, like the British want to be bringing in 3 infantry across here every single time, right? Well, if you have that sub in there, the British can't bring those infantry across. All they can do is attack it with a seaplane. Oh, you missed. The seaplane lands, non-combat move comes along, the British can't move them across. And so, you know, like it's worth it for you, even if they hit you once every second turn. Like you keep putting a sub in there, once one gets killed, like you can just sail right through this Navy. They can't stop you. And so, like even if you do it once every 2 turns, that's 3 that they miss. And then a couple of turns from now, that's another 3 that they miss. Like it's going to have a big effect over time on the Western Front if you keep them from bringing stuff across. You can also do the same with a seaplane, although if there's a surface warship in this in this zone here. Like if you had a seaplane on map instead, they could put a surface warship in there, not attacking you, but then they're allowed to move them across. So that's not quite as good. They can also put cruiser raiders in there, like split a cruiser in half into two cruiser raiders, and the only thing that you can attack them with is ships that can go 3 spaces or more. So we're talking torpedo boat destroyers or subs or cruisers. So that's and like they're diminished shots that they can get. Cruiser would be attacking at a 3, and a destroyer attacking at a 1, and submarine attacking at a 1. So there's no guarantee that they're going to hit you. There's still low probability on the shots, but all in all, though, a submarine is probably the best one that you can put in there because, like I said early in the game, it's just those seaplanes. Once you get into those technologies, like once they get depth charges and hydrophones, well, then they can attack that with a seaplane and a destroyer. And so now, like they got a shot at 3 and a shot at 4, and then the sub can escape if you miss them. So they've got a much better chance of killing you. But early in the game is hunting season when it comes to the German submarines. So don't forget about that if you're the German. That might be a better use of your money than attacking the British Navy. But like I said, that's, if you can pull it off, I mean, that's a pretty good raid, right? Anyway, so that's some of the thoughts that I have on that. As far as the differences in the ships themselves go, like some of these, like the coastal sub and the pre-dreadnought, I don't purchase any of those, even though they're cheaper. I just don't purchase them because they're not nearly as useful. Like they're not bad in a confined space here where you only have to go 1 space, because they only go 1 space. If they're at a major naval base, of course, they can go 2 spaces. But then, like, let's say you went to here, well, now he can only go 1 space because they don't have a major naval base. So they're just not nearly as mobile as the other ships. Like that's a tough ship and all, but like it's no good in open waters. You definitely wouldn't want to build them if you were the Americans, for instance, because you've got to cross oceans to get to anywhere to fight anybody. And so what are you going to do with them? Like it's going to take you 3 or 4 turns just to get them across the ocean. And even then you're going to plod along up and down the coast. So, like I said, they're tough ships and they're pretty good for shore bombardment. I just use the ones that start the game with. And after that, I don't build anymore. You might have a different preference for that. Dreadnoughts, now, these were the king of the seas back then. They were the most powerful weapon that has ever been built, like in history. These would be, back in World War I, these would be like a nuclear weapon is today. We have treaties to limit nuclear weapons. Well, shortly after World War I, they had a treaty limiting the construction of dreadnoughts, and actually there was a lot of them that had to be deconstructed. They had to be taken apart because dreadnoughts were just that powerful, right? These used to be the battleship of the seas, and then when these were built, the difference was the propulsion. Like these ones, you can only put so much armor and so big of guns on them because you had to be able to move them with the propulsion that they had, and they were already slow with what they had. But with the new type of ship, the difference was the propulsion was much better, and so you could build bigger guns, you could put more armor on them, and they could go faster even then. So that's what made them, like they were literally twice as powerful as these ships because of that. And a cruiser, like in the game here, of course, a cruiser hits at 6 and these hit at 8. A cruiser could theoretically win a battle. They're, like the odds are against them. But in a real fight between a cruiser and a dreadnought, back then, the dreadnought would be much better because a dreadnought could shoot long before the cruiser could. The cruiser's guns just didn't have the range that a dreadnought's did. Their guns could shoot a lot further. So it's unlikely that the cruiser would even get into range to get a shot off at a dreadnought. And then, of course, the armor was a lot lighter. the cruiser was faster than the dreadnought because of the lack of armor and the smaller guns. When it comes to this game, I think that the cruiser all around is probably the best ship in the game because of the fact that it does have 6 attack and defense, and it can go 3. And then if you're at a naval base, it can go 4. So they can actually go a long ways. They still have shore bombardment, although it's half as much as a dreadnought. But I mean, it's they're all around because of that mobility. I think that they're probably the best ship for most applications. Now, if you were just using them for defense in an application like this, then the dreadnought would be better. And actually, I was reading up about them. I already knew this, but it kind of reminded me. I thought that was cool. The word dreadnought, like the reason they were called dreadnoughts was because of the first one that was ever built, the HMS Dreadnought. But what it means though is that it's an old-timey saying. It referred to a fearless person. Because you dread not, like you fear not, right? And so if you're going to build a ship that's twice as powerful as any other ship that's ever been built, well, then you would dread not, wouldn't you? Anyway, that's where that name comes from. I thought that was kind of cool. But anyway, the dreadnoughts really are the king of the seas in this game. They're not as mobile as the cruiser, but they are twice as mobile as the pre-dreadnought. And of course, their guns are the most powerful. And the big thing, of course, is that they can absorb a hit before, so it takes 2 hits to sink one of them. And so overall, they're the best one, but they're also more expensive, right? So like these are, what are they, 9 IPP, and these are 16, you know? So again, that's another plus for the cruiser. I'm a big fan of the dreadnoughts that start on the build queue, finishing them off because they're already partially paid for. Destroyers, of course, they're very versatile as well, you know, especially when it comes to mine warfare. You can take a mine out, and when you develop that depth charges and hydrophones technology, they are able to attack submarines. So they're pretty handy in themselves. You know, they can attack a cruiser raider, although they only hit at 1, but still they can attack them. You know, that's something. Whereas a dreadnought and a pre-dreadnought, they can't attack a cruiser raider because it's just too fast. They just couldn't catch them. Anyway, so that's probably the differences between the ships. I don't really build these either, coastal subs. They only one IPP cheaper than regular sub, and they only move 1 space. So a sub is much more powerful, and it moves a lot further. And for 1 IPP, you're better off purchasing a sub, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, you might think differently, but that's what I think. One of the things that I would highly recommend if you're playing one of these nations or any other seafaring nation, but particularly these 2 nations here, is that you fully understand the import rules, because it's very, very important. You might think that it would be easiest just to put your ships in port. Like you could put all these British ships in port here, but the problem with that is then the Germans just come over here, take London, right? And then all of these ships will get rolled for. You want to know what I'm talking about? Go read those rules. Like the British might capture half of these ships, or a third of them, or something like that. And a lot of the other ones would be scuttled. Some of them might escape. But you really, really got to be careful when it comes to putting your ships in port. One game that Bob and I played, I put 4 dreadnoughts, or no, I think it was he did, put 4 dreadnoughts in port back over here in one of these ports. I can't remember which one. And then I attacked this territory. There was only 1 guy on there. So I just brought over a transport, and I took that guy out and put my guys on the territory there. And so then at that time, the rules were that you just captured those ships. And so I took his 4 dreadnoughts. I said, Bob, we got to change that rule. So we did. So there's a scale where you're rolling to find out what happens with those ships. But that's what I'm saying, though, is like you have to watch what you're doing. Another game that we played recently, the German ships were in port here, and then they took a sub through here, like they rolled and they got the sub through there, and they laid a mine here in that sea zone A12, and so the German ships were kind of stuck in that. In this port here, they couldn't leave. I mean, they could, but they would have had to roll to get through there. And I have neutered the mine rules a little bit. I think it's in the errata. If not, it's definitely in the new rule book that's coming out soon. Doug is printing a rule book, and I've neutered the mine rules a bit because I've always felt that they were a bit overpowered, but they're still there. So the mine, instead of attacking you at 3, is going to attack you at 1. And it's going to be a little less to take that mine out of there or maybe I made it 2. I can't remember. I'm not looking at the rules right now. But anyway, mine warfare is going to screw you as well. If you go in port, you might get stuck in there, or at least have to risk getting out of there. So mine rules are something that you're going to want to explore, and import rules are something that you're going to want to explore. These videos that I'm making about the Masterclass series are not about going through the rules, so I'm not going to get into them right now. But what I'm telling you is I highly recommend that you know those rules before you start a game, because you don't want to get stuck in port and have somebody take that territory out. Sometimes it's best to have your Navy out of port, and for other reasons as well. That's not the only reason. Like if you're in port, then you're not gonna go as far as you can, put it that way. You're not gonna get that bonus for the major port. Your dreadnought's gonna go only 2 spaces instead of 3, and that can make the difference between what you want to accomplish and what you can accomplish. You just can't get there because you're in port. You're too far away. So absolutely make sure that you understand those rules when it comes to that. Seaplanes play a much bigger role in this game than they do in the 36 game, because in the 36 game there are other planes, fighters, tactical bombers, medium bombers, that are much more powerful than seaplanes. But in this game, a seaplane, when the war starts, a seaplane is the only plane on the board that can actually shoot something. There are only 2 other planes. One of them you need technology for, and the other one is only good for observing artillery. And so the seaplane is the only plane that's going to be able to help you. It's not going to help you on the land. It's only going to help you in the sea. Hence the name seaplane, right? But anyway, you're going to want some more of them if you're the British, if the Germans start buying submarines, because like I said earlier, that's the only thing that you have to defend your convoy lines with, is those seaplanes. You're going to want to position them well. The seaplane base doesn't really help you too much. Like, it helps you when you're non-combat moving them, but it doesn't extend your maritime patrol range. I don't know that I would spend much money on a seaplane base. It does allow you to scramble, so, and they don't cost much. So, you know, you might think about it. If you had 2 or 3 seaplanes in London, you know, you might want to put a seaplane base on there, which would allow you to scramble them. But other than that, they don't really help that much. Because the Allies are not going to do a lot of convoy raiding, you're not going to need many seaplanes when it comes to the Central Powers. This is a good place down here, Gibraltar, to have seaplanes, I found. And then the Mediterranean as well, because those convoy lines are worth so much. One place that I found was a good place for seaplanes was here on the island of Sardinia, because you can actually reach out into A44 just outside of Gibraltar. Plus you can go 1-2 into here. You can go 1-2 into here. Actually, no, sorry, it's Sicily. Sicily that I was thinking about, because you can still reach out into the Atlantic there, and you can reach anywhere in the Mediterranean with your seaplanes on Sicily. That actually worked really well, I found. So yeah, that's maybe the best place in the Mediterranean. But be careful though, because if say the Austro-Hungarians have transports, they can take those seaplanes out if you don't have any land units there, because seaplanes, they don't defend on land, right? So if somebody attacks a territory with seaplanes on it, then they're automatically destroyed. Kind of a waste. So if you're going to do something like that, like putting seaplanes on Sicily, make sure you also have at least one unit there, unless they don't have any transports in the water. So, you know, that helps. The other thing that the seaplane can do is it can take out transports. So be aware of that with your transports. Like, transports can move around the board pretty easily in this game without the fighters on the board and the other kinds of aircraft, but seaplane on maritime air patrol will take them out, so be careful of that. Don't just think that you're completely safe if the other side has got some seaplanes. Make sure that you're not within their maritime air patrol range, because I tell you, when it comes to using my seaplane, like, they don't have a lot of uses in the game. But if somebody leaves a transport there, I would much rather take a 7 IPP transport than I would at taking a chance at maybe getting as much as 5 on a convoy line with raiding. The transport's worth more, right? So be careful with that. But yeah, like I said, you're going to need those seaplanes, especially if you're the British. The Americans are going to get in the war, but not until late. So this battle here is mostly just between the British and the Germans, and the French can have some influence over that, like I said. If the Russians had more money, then, you know, like, if they had boats, then they could have some influence here. If the Germans, you know, lost a few of their ships, like if they did go on a raid against the British and they only had a couple of ships left, then that might open them up to the Russians. This little Russian sub here, he can take some money off the British. This guy can be pretty annoying, actually. He can piss you right off because, like I said earlier with the seaplanes, he's hard to get. So they do have a seaplane here, and that is within his map range. But if he misses, well, sorry. And then you raid him next time, you know. Like, you can take some money off. Although the money here is a little bit less, though, right? This line is only 2 IPP. But sure, why not go for it? What else is that sub doing for you, right? So that's something for you to remember, is to always do that one if you're the Russians. But the Russians just don't have enough money to be purchasing ships, and they can't really get any there. Like, they do have some down in the south there, and one over in the Pacific, but they're not going to be able to get them over here. We don't have that line along the Arctic thing that is in the 36 game, and so they that's just not available to them. And that White Canal that went up to the north there, that's not in this game either. And so, like, the Russians are kind of stuck there. Be nice if you had, like I said, it'd be really nice if you were able to afford to put a couple of ships in there, but it's really unlikely that you're going to. Even if you've got lots of money, then you're probably going to want to, put more pressure on the land, on the Germans and on the Austro-Hungarians and on the Ottomans, if you've got that extra money. So I don't expect you to be able to put any more on there as the Russians. You might have that one crazy friend, though. I've got a dreadnought. A Russian dreadnought. Well, good for you. That was a lot of dudes that you didn't purchase for that, but good for you. Anyway, yeah, I don't know that there's much more I can say about this, so I'm just going to leave you with that. Battle of the Atlantic is very important in this game, the North Atlantic particularly. Yeah, good luck with your rolling in there, because like, we're not just losing infantry here, you're losing expensive things, or you're killing expensive things. So good luck with the rolling when it comes to these. And again, can't stress this enough, make sure you understand the import rules. It's not always best to have your ships in port. That's all I got for you today. Take care, everyone. General Hand Grenade, out.